So, hi, everybody. Super hyped today. We have Matt with us. Matt is a very, very cool guy that I met through weddings. He's worked with our company a bunch of times now. He does video. And the last time that we worked together, we got to get chatting just, personal lives. And it turned out we had a ton of stuff in common. He's got a super interesting story. And very inspiring how he's out there and he's doing things and he's trying things. So I'm hyped to talk to Matt today. So Matt, do you want to introduce yourself to everybody?
Hi, everybody. My name is Matt. I'm from Long Island, New York, and yeah, so I've been in the video world for about 8 years now. Yeah, about 8 years, like to the date, because I was a junior in college, and I guess I'll go right into it. I went to school without really knowing what I wanted to do, and I remember I was like, okay, what seems like a cool major? So I guess journalism and media sounds like a cool major because TV shows and movies. And I used to love comedy, so maybe I could just work on the set. Nothing involving video or camera work, just being like funny. Um, so there was this one digital documentary class that we had to take. It was a required class. And they lent us these cameras. They were like professional camera, like candy cams. You could just you hold them like it's a football.
Okay.
And they said, okay, for your final project, you have to make a video of somebody or interview somebody that you find interesting. So, okay. Luckily, I have a lot of interesting friends. What I mean by interesting is they have tastes that are very different than what their stereotype would, I guess, include. For example, I have a friend who is, at the time, she was in medical school, but at the same time, she was a kickboxer. So I'm like, okay, this is great.
Super cool.
Yeah. I had a chemistry major or a chemist who's in a death metal band.
Oh, that is very cool.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I had some variety right here. So I was like, okay, I'll just interview them. I'll get them doing their thing while they're studying, but at the same time while they are while they're studying, and at the same time just while they're doing their thing, while they're kicking the crap out of the bag. My professor at the time, who she had some ins with like NBC and like a lot of the big shows, and she had said, I'm not going to boost your ego. However, I think there's something here. I would love if you took the part 2 to this class. It's not
Okay.
required, but I would love if you took it. And that really gave me enough confidence to be like, okay, let me just dip my toe into this.
Now, was that your first time being on that side of the camera, like for an actual project?
Yeah. Um, Luckily, these cameras at the time were so easy. You just turn it on, you hit record, and everything just automates. So like
Right.
white balance, auto exposure. This was before I even knew about like professional audio. So I would just
Right.
camera at somebody and just point it. However, there was things I was just understanding like how they worked. Like I
Uh-huh.
understood when a close up was good, when a close up was important. I had a decent eye for it.
Right.
That's what she meant. Like there's something here. So from there on, I remember I was telling my brother, because my brother is like my biggest role model, but at the same time, my biggest critic.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse, right? It's awesome to have somebody who's there to guide you and support you, but sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, I just want to do something without constantly being critiqued. Even though we all need critique to grow, sometimes it's just like, oh,
Yeah, he was definitely one of those. He was definitely hard, but he was definitely hard on me. But I appreciate it, especially now,
right.
because he was always telling me like you need a skill to get through life successfully. So I'm like, okay, um, that's how I thought about life. Okay, I need a skill. I need to be good at something.
Right, right.
So when I told him about this, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just knew that it was something that I could be good at. And I told him, hey, I want to do this. And he goes, okay, that's fine. But you got to show us something meaning the family, by the end of the summer. Show us that you're making progress. Show us that you can do something. Show us that there's a pulse here.
Now, were you originally thinking on moving into something else, or maybe just staying with college, graduating, go getting a job in corporate America? Like, was it a shift, or you just were kind of like out there floating, trying to find yourself?
So I remember I knew I had to go to college. Like I grew up in a very traditional family.
Same.
And
It was the same thing. My father, like, it was it wasn't if you get into college, it was when you go to college, period, end of story. And I ended up not using my degree. And my sister, have you ever worked with Nikki with the company? Okay, so Nikki, she's my sister. She's one of our head photographers. Same. She went to college. Both of us ended up not using our degree. And my father doesn't regret it. He's a strong proponent of college, although with my own children, I wonder, looking at what people spend on it now, I wonder if it has the same value maybe that our parents may have thought that it had. But yeah, it's an interesting thing, right? When you have your family, and while we have to make ourselves happy, you also, a lot of people care about their family, and moving into that shift to where, like, I'm going to maybe do something else. It can be challenging. So your brother was like, right, like, we're going to support you, but show us, show us there's something here.
it's interesting you say that because there is in one of my other hobbies, they were talking to me about, when you get to certain goals or certain positions or ranks, it's not necessarily what happens when you're there. It's who do you become throughout the whole process. Like it's not about
Right.
the destination, it's the journey. And I had this conversation, like if I decide to have kids in the future, do I want to go to college? One of the things is probably not, but at the same time, doing well in school, just studying extra, like just working hard, I think is a value you could still teach them. That's still one of the things I feel like you could still gain from school.
Right.
There's going to be things you don't want to do. There's going to be things that you're going to have to cram for. You're going to have to stay up all night once in a while.
Right. Right.
I was used, because now editing and all that stuff, I still like deadlines, super easy for me. But I think school taught me that. It
Okay.
wasn't necessarily, I didn't major in punctuality or deadlines. However, that's just a skill where it's like, hey, you have this project that's due at the end of the week. And if you don't get it done, you're going to fail.
So
And
you're able to learn, it's not like you were able to take different life experiences, and you're able to grow and learn from them and apply them to what you're doing now.
for me, it was okay. So I have to, it really taught me how to organize my time. That was really
Okay.
the thing that helped me. It was okay, if I don't get this project done, I'm going to fail. And if I fail, my mom's going to kick my ass. So that was, I knew there was a consequence for procrastinating. There was a consequence for not doing your work. Not that like the work itself, like I don't remember the projects I did. However, these are things that I apply to my business now, where it's like, okay, if I don't get this done in time, I'm gonna have an unhappy couple or unhappy client. They can be pissed. Not
Now,
that.
do you think that comes from college, or from having a family who placed an emphasis on responsibility and success? Like, it was the same in my family. Like, I always used to ask my parents, it's not fair. All of my friends, get rewards when they get A's and B's. And for us, we just get grounded if we get C's and D's. And my parents were always like, right, because A's and B's are the bare minimum. Like, this is what we expect from you. And for me, I have amazing parents. I have amazing parents. Everything I have now is because of what they gave me and did for me and taught me growing up. But being irresponsible just wasn't an option. Like, like when you say my mom would get I had the parents, I had the mother who literally waited up for me even when I was in college, and I was home. I was a grown woman, with a job, and moved back home for a time, and she waited up for me. Like, I had those parents that were very, very involved. And while I was younger, I hated it because I wanted to be, I wanted to be footloose and fancy free. But growing up with that, irresponsibility just simply isn't an option, I think helped me tremendously.
Yeah, I don't think college made you become that person. I think that college and high school were ways to practice becoming
Right.
a responsible person.
Yeah, that's probably a great point.
If there's anything I learned from those two stages of life, it was being responsible. I learned how to manage time. I knew I had to go to class. I knew I had to. There were so many classes that I had to take that I can care less about.
Right.
Uh, there were things that were just so boring to me. There were certain things that were fun. There were certain things I found interesting, but the majority of it, I just didn't find it interesting. I didn't care. I studied just to pass the test, and
Right.
then afterwards, I would just forget it all. Loved math, loved U.S. history, but everything else
Really? I
to
hated
go
them.
crap.
Hated it so much.
I was because I always thought history was like a story. It was like a soap opera. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Like, oh wow, like this president really screwed up. How's this guy gonna handle it?
You know
Like,
what? It probably has to do with the teachers too, because I remember when I was in college, I actually went to county college for 2 years because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I told my parents, I'm like, I'm going to take a year off and find myself. And my parents were like, no, you're not. No, you're not. So I went to county college, and then my parents, again, very, very blessed. They paid for me to go to college. So they were like, wait a minute, you could go to county college for 2 years and then transfer to a 4 year school and you get the same degree, but the first 2 years cost a fraction of what it would be for a 4 year. So I went to county college for 2 years, and it was actually my county college. I went to Middlesex County College, and I had a world history teacher, and we did like the Greek. Everybody knows about Greek history now from what's that movie? I am
oh,
Sparta.
300.
Yeah, 300. So
I never
everybody
saw.
knows about it now, but she actually back I'm old. I'm old AF. So when I was in college, that movie wasn't out yet, and she taught us that, but the way she taught it was like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing. I want to know more." So maybe if I would have actually had like good teachers my whole life, I wouldn't have had that strong detest for math and history that I have now.
Yeah, it's really funny. Like,
So what were you majoring in? So you took this class that you ultimately had to do a project for, and it helped guide you into something you were doing. Were you what year was that you were in school?
so I went to community college also.
Okay.
I saw enough. I learned firsthand what this debt really does to families.
Right.
My sister had went to a 4 year school that was pretty expensive. She went to community college, but then when she transferred, she went to a really expensive college. And I remember paying the student loans. Um, our family pretty much like drained all our accounts just to cover it because they didn't want to pay interest.
Right.
But I remember we were struggling for a while because we had to
It's
pay for it.
crushing. It's crushing. The loans are crushing.
Yeah, it wasn't fun. So I remember she's much older than me. She's 11 years older than me.
Okay.
So I had some time to really learn from that experience. I got the chance to learn from her mistakes. Um, so for me, I went to community college too. I think it was like 5 grand a year.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's like there's no comparison.
then when I transferred, I went to like the cheapest local school I can go to. I went to St. Joseph's at the time.
Okay.
St. Joseph's College. There was two buildings, and like each class was like 20 kids. So it was a real small school. I also I also went because I think the population ratio at that point was 71% girls, 29% guys. Um,
That's hilarious. You're like, if I have to go to college, I'm gonna go where there's a ton of hotties.
I had went to I had chose that school. I didn't realize at the time actually. It was just one of those things. I'm like, oh, this is meant to be. I don't know.
Just a happy act. That's how I found my husband. I when I had a job before, in a previous life, nobody just moves into wedding photography full time. So in a previous life, when I had a full-time job, I had to this was back in the day before everybody owned cell phones, and you had to go and you had to apply and pass a credit check, and you had to call over the phone to talk to a person. Um, so when you first started, you had to listen in, and my now husband had actually just gotten back from Iraq. So he wasn't in his current career. It was kind of like a transition job for him. And you have to listen up with somebody. So I'm like, well, if I have to go listen up with somebody, I'm going to listen up with somebody who's really good looking. Like, why would I choose a non-attractive person when I can choose an attractive person? And he was the best looking guy in the office. So that's how I found my husband. It wasn't like so it's so funny. So for anybody who's listening, if you haven't listened to other podcasts and maybe this is the first podcast you're listening to, I'm a wedding photographer by trade. Matt, he'll probably get into it. Wedding video cinematography is one of the things that he does. So we'll often hear like these really cool stories about how people meet, and mine is just like he was super hot and I sat next to him until he paid attention to me.
Honestly, a lot of it, that's kind of, I feel like that's really how it starts, where it's like you're attracted to somebody and you just want one reason,
Right.
one little spark to have a reason to talk to them.
Exactly. So did you take this class at your county college or did you take it at the 4-year school?
I took this at the 4-year school. So at this
Okay.
point, when I transferred, I had to declare a major.
Right.
And I remember I was deciding, because I remember at this is 2014. IT was like the next hot thing, because everyone
Yes.
said if you can know how to use computers, you'll get a job. Because this is when Instagram was really starting to blow up, Facebook was really starting to blow up. Like cell phone cameras were a real thing now. Like they were
Right.
like there was cameras on phones, but now people were constantly recording, and this is where people were starting to get glued to their phones. So I was like, okay, IT might be a good thing, but I wasn't thinking of it. Like I didn't know anything about computers. Like I didn't.
Like, I'm
For
going
me,
to
I'm like,
major in this thing. Don't know much about it, but it's probably cool.
okay, what's going to make the most money that makes the most sense for me? So I was deciding between that, and then I was deciding between journalism and media. So I chose journalism and media because it sounded fun.
Right.
But then that's why I had to take that digital documentary class. I didn't know I had to take it. I just took it because it was a required class. So I take the class. My teacher says, hey, listen, there's something here. Let's try part 2. I told my brother about this. He goes, okay, let's, show us what you got. And I remember I had to find an internship that summer. And I was able to learn a little bit about class, like learn about exposure and all that fun stuff. And I remember I was able to come up with a cover letter with one of my classmates. It was the most generic cover letter. It was like, hey, my name is Matt. I am new to video. I have a Canon XA10 because I bought that camera later on. And I'm just looking to get my foot in the door. I'm willing to work for free. I do whatever it takes. Actually, let me back up for a little bit. I didn't mention the working for free part. You'll see what I mean in a little bit. I just said I'm trying to get my foot in the door. I want to learn from people. I sent this to everything that Google showed me for video company Long Island. So I would just copy paste that cover letter, Google video companies on Long Island, and just send it to everybody.
So you weren't afraid of rejection. You're like, I like this. I want to do this. And what's the worst they can say? The worst they can say is no.
I had this delusion. I don't know. I guess it's a good thing, but I had this delusion that I was like, someone's gonna say yes. There's gonna.
Right. Like did somebody say yes? Were you right?
Well, at first I wasn't. But then I revised it and I said, I'm willing to work for free. Now you start getting people responding.
Right. They're like, okay, I could do that.
Yeah. Oh, I don't have to pay you. Oh, perfect.
Yeah, come on in tomorrow.
So I had this one videographer reach out to me. He goes, hey, listen, I have this wedding today. If you want to do it, he emailed me at like 8:00 in the morning. He goes, if you can get to Hicksville, which is the meeting spot, at 11:00, it's a 12-hour day. I can pay $50.
So,
I said yes. Now, the day, it was a hard day. It was a wedding day. It was a hard day.
right.
12-hour day. And I'm like, I really don't like this $50 thing. I know they did it for free. I'd rather had done it for free. than the
Yeah.
$50.
Because then your brain starts doing the math. Like, what was my hourly wage?
Yeah, because at least if I did it for free, I could be like, okay, this is all internship. This is hardcore internship. The $50, it was almost like, okay, so like for people who aren't in the wedding industry, and I'm not trying to say this to sound like it's a guarantee, but sometimes when we get tipped, usually the standard would be $100.
Right.
Just imagine if you work the full wedding and you get an envelope, and that envelope's like $20. It's just like you understand, you appreciate the tip.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's like at this point, just don't even give it anything. Don't give it. It was like it was small enough
Just enough to cover your gas.
yeah. So I'm like, okay, this feels weird. Like I should be appreciative, but at the same time, I worked for $50, 12 hours. So, anyways, I learned a lot. I got to observe. And I realized after like working 3 or 4 weddings with him, I'm like, he's not doing anything that is impossible.
Right.
He's just in the right place. He's where he's supposed to be, and he just makes sure he has everything with him.
Right.
And once I realized, okay, like if you are in the right place at the right time, you're supposed to be there, and you have equipment that like works quickly, we could do this. So I thought to myself, I'm like, oh, I could definitely do this.
You're like, I could do this. It's funny. I was talking to somebody a couple podcasts ago who's he's in a creative industry as well. His job, it's crazy to me. He does very, very well for himself. And he writes blog posts. He does search engine optimization. He's got a team, he's got a huge team. So that's what he does. And he's also in a creative industry. And we were talking about how I think people have like this misconception, even people who want to go into creative industries, and it just seems like magic. Like, how does it all come together? Magic. Somehow they magically do it. But not only can it be, but I feel like it has to be almost formulaic. Like if you're going to consistently deliver amazing results, like there's a way to do it. There's a thing to do. With video. I do photography, but it's fairly similar. It's the same thing. Have the equipment, know how to use it, and know where to be. And then, for wedding photography, there's a few other little nuances, but it is, I think, when you are interested in something that seems impossible, but then you go out, and if you're not afraid to look, like, what is someone else who's done it, like someone else who's been successful, what are they doing, and you're able to break it down, you're like, this is achievable. This isn't some magical mountain up there that I could never climb. Like, I can break it down and I can do this. You just have to like not be afraid to like, right, I'm just going to randomly email everybody in the world and someone will let me show up, and then I'm going to see what they're doing and I'm going to break it down and see how I can apply this. And obviously, that was maybe just kind of like a jumping off point to something that served you incredibly well.
It's strange because I feel like I'm one of those people that feels that if I'm not good at something, I want to be told that I'm not good at something.
Right.
Or I feel like you kind of, even if that person's not good at whatever skill that's needed, I feel like having the mindset that you are is what's going to get you far.
Right. You need that
So
confidence. You need to have confidence in yourself.
even if it's, I don't want to say delusion, but even if you're just not good, but if you have that confidence, I've noticed this a lot where you see people who, I'm not trying to be mean, but who aren't that good at something, but they're successful at it. Or I've seen this a lot, especially since we're in weddings. You see like a regular looking guy, he just an ordinary guy. Let's just give him a name, John
Johnny Appleseed.
Johnny Appleseeds. I just want to have a friend named Johnny Apple.
Do you really? That's hilarious.
Yeah, he's actually a wedding videographer. He's really cool. Um, but yeah, like John Smith. Um, he's a regular dude, 9 to 5 job. He asked you to film his wedding. His bride, gorgeous. And you wonder, like, how did this come to be? Like, you wonder, like, what's going on? And I've heard enough guys in this situation be like, "Oh, I just talked to her. That's it." Like, he'd had
That
the confidence to go talk to her. It
it's
wasn't.
it's funny. I tell this to my husband. My husband has lots of great attributes. Um, and when I saw him, it was his looks. It was purely his looks. But I don't want to say cocky because he's not cocky, but he's confident. He's very, very confident. And that was like, that's what it was for me. Like just this confidence. And it was funny when I first started my own business, I went out there, and I had worked for another studio for many, many years before I did it on my own. So I had already learned my craft and I had already done it. But when I would have consultations and I would talk to people, I never approached it like, well, I hope I can photograph your wedding and I hope you're gonna like it. I went out there like, yeah, man, like I can do this and you're gonna love it. You're gonna love what you have because I know I can do this. And I actually had a client tell one of my other photographers when they're like, they talk to a bunch of different people. And when they said, why did you go with Cherryville? Like what swayed you? And they're like, because Deanna just told us like you're gonna love us so much more than all those other guys. Just come to us. And it was just like, and I was like, yeah, that sounds great. And it's amazing how I feel like people hold themselves down. And I see myself downing things that I want to do all the time. And I've seen it time and time again. If you just, believe you can do something, you can do it. You really, really can. It's amazing how just having confidence can get you insanely far. And it's just, yeah, like just not, oh, I hope I can, video your wedding. It's like, yeah, man, like go with me. I'm the bomb. You're going to love working with me. You're going to love the film that you get at the end of it. It's funny. Like it's so true what you say. It's just that confidence.
I remember when I first started, like my first 2, 3 years, I had a hard time because I remember I just didn't realize like what you could charge, that you can make money off of this, that you're only making money just doing this. Like there isn't like some hidden crazy besides editing. There isn't some crazy other job that you have to earn your money with. Like the fact that you can make money doing something that's really fun, it shocked me. So I remember I always had this mind for the longest time. I had this mindset where if I was confident, I was cocky. If I was cocky, I was, pardon my language, but an asshole.
Right.
If I wasn't, if I wasn't those things, like if I was timid or if I was doubtful, then I'd be a lot more, I'd be a good person. And that was something I really thought. I kept thinking like the people that are very confident in themselves, those are like the selfish people. I used to think those are the bad people. No, they're not. Like you can be it's okay to believe in yourself. It's okay to think that you're good. It's okay to think that you're the shit. I just think a lot of times, and I don't know if it's programming, I don't know if it's a societal thing, but there's almost this feeling of, oh, I'm doing the right thing by lowering myself.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people suffer from that. I have, for whatever reason, I don't know. I've always had it in my brain. If someone else can do something, why can't I? And I've always my whole it's right. Everybody's got different personalities. My whole life, it's just who I've been. Um, and when it's so funny. So I'm not the only head photographer for my company. For anybody who's listening, we have multiple head photographers, amazingly talented people. And if you have to become a head photographer, there's a bunch of things that I look for. One of the biggest things I look for is, are you confident in your own ability? Because I'll have people who are fantastically talented, just fantastically talented, but they don't have that confidence in themselves. And if they don't, like, I'll never put you as a head photographer, because if you're not completely confident in your abilities that you're going to deliver something amazing for somebody, nobody else is going to have that confidence in you. If you're not putting it out there, no one's going to be picking it up. And I think it's probably something that's fairly difficult for people to overcome. And I wish I can't relate to it, because I mean, when I was a kid, I would have confidence in things I had no right having confidence in. My parents have videos of me when I was 8 years old. I'm in my mid 40s. So they would have videos of me singing like I was Michael Jackson, trying to moonwalk at family parties, grabbing microphones. Like, I mean, I had confidence. I had confidence in things that I shouldn't have. But how did you like move past that? Was it just something that like you saw it in people, you saw real life, like how much confidence can do for you, and something in your brain flipped, like it flipped, and you're like, I don't have to feel bad that I have a talent that I can use, and it's good to have that confidence.
So at this point now, this is by 2018, 2019, I got into personal development, and that was a big booster for me. That was a real game changer for everything I did, because you learned that these thoughts, these doubts, these fears, these insecurities, these mindsets, I don't want to say that they're normal, but they're common amongst other
Right.
people. And it's something that is relatable. Like, at one point, I had went through like a really low point. I thought I was depressed. I was super anxious. I would wake up feeling really sick, thinking I was going to throw up. Um, just was not at a good point in life. And I went to the seminar, and it was totally changing, because they go over how these are things that, I don't want to say that we bring onto ourselves, but a lot of what we focus on, the way our body is postured, the what we do on a regular basis, our habits, we're just going to become what we do on a regular basis. So
Yeah,
if you're
100%.
there's a quote from Bruce Lee that I forgot. I can't even quote it, but I'm gonna sum it up. Where even if you joke, like even if you're someone who like makes fun of themselves so much, it's not good for your confidence. Like, it's because now you're habitually just talking bad about yourself, and that's just going to reflect eventually on how you feel about yourself. You can convince yourself of anything. And at the seminar, you learn how people can go through very similar experiences, but have totally different meanings that they take. So the seminar I went to was a Tony Robbins seminar, and
He hypes you up, man. I see. So I've never been to one of his seminars, but I do see like clips, and I'm very much into like surrounding yourself with good people. And people always say surround yourself with good people, have positive people in your life. Um, but doing this podcast this season specifically, where I've been focusing on people who go their own way and make their own path, I'm talking to like amazing people. And after every single podcast, I'm very close with my parents still. I'll call them, and after the podcast, I'm like, you're feeling like you could conquer anything. Like, just being around other people who are like, yeah, you can do this, and just putting you in that positive mind frame where you're like, yes, yes, I can do this. It just you're okay, yes, you're still there. That's just that'll go away. It really does do so much for you, just changing that. And I've seen some of his things, and it fires me up. I'm like, yeah.
yeah, it's definitely something I recommend everybody do. I think honestly, the world would be so much better if people did this. It's super beneficial, powerful. And one of the things that really stuck to me, this really changed the way, because I've been to two seminars now. The second seminar is what really changed the way I look at certain things, and also the way I look at other people. So there was a story of two brothers who grew up with, I don't want to say a terrible father, but an abusive father, alcoholic, a lot of problems. One brother becomes super successful. Has a wife, I think they have kids, has a great job. Uh, their outlook in life is extremely positive. The other brother, he's struggling a little bit in between jobs, borderline suicide, not his best area, not his best years. They go to the seminar, and they're both asked the same question. Now, these are two brothers that grew up in the same environment, same father, treated the same, everything.
So for anybody watching, if you notice my video quality went from super awesome to not so good, you can blame my 8-year-old. Okay, but you can still hear me, right?
Loud and clear.
Okay, but so the brothers who had the crappy experience growing up with the abusive father and everything, they both went to the same seminar, and that's where it left off.
Yeah. So just to sum it all up, two brothers, one turned out pretty good, very successful. I think he's the CEO of his own business. Oh, he's the CEO somewhere, making a lot of money, has a wonderful wife. I think he's got kids. The other brother, not so well. He took a hard turn, just not his best years. But they're both asked the same question. How do you think you got to the way you are? Like, why do you think you're like this? Brother number one with the positive outcomes goes, I'm like this because of my father. The brother who's not doing so well, he goes, I'm like this because of my father. So you heard the same upbringing. You heard about two of this very similar people, but totally different outcomes. But they had the same reason. However, that reason meant differently for both of them.
I've seen that in my own family. My mother is she's an amazing mother. She literally devotes her entire life like to her family. And one of the reasons, it's funny, I pointed out to her. So my grandmother my grandmother grew up and she had a very, very hard life growing up. My grandmother lived in like the hills of Pennsylvania. Uh, and this was a while ago, like didn't even have running water, had an abusive stepfather that she personally had to bathe, very, very terrible upbringing. And then she met my grandfather, they got married, but her life like very quickly went into like she got pregnant very, very fast. She was very young, and she went like back into that caregiving role, and it was a lot for her, and she probably didn't deal with it the way she should, and she had a drinking problem when she was younger, much to my grandmother's benefit. When as my mother had children of her own, had me, she gained the confidence to confront my grandmother about it and say, listen, like this is what you did to me growing up. I didn't like it, and you need to stop. And she did, like, which is an amazing story to my grandmother. So this isn't to put down my grandmother at all, because I think it's outstanding that her daughter approached her once and bared her soul, and she changed. But my mom my mom had a very, very rough upbringing, not supportive like mine. And I'm like, I'm so happy that you had that, because I think that's why she's the amazing woman that she is. And, she has a different life, than some of her sisters. So the exact same family, the exact same upbringing, she became an amazing person because of the trials that she went through. And, that doesn't happen to everybody. And it's so shocking how it's what you give to yourself that dictates it. Like if you're like, right, this is going to hold me down, this is going to oppress me, this is going to make my life terrible, and then it holds it down, it oppresses you and makes your life terrible. Or if you're like, right, I'm going to make this help me grow, then it makes you help you grow. Like you literally can guide your life.
Yeah, no, it's interesting how there's just two roads you could take, and when it comes to just any situation, a situation I love explaining. So I'm 28 years old, and unfortunately, for those who can see me on camera, know that there's nothing here. I want to say,
And if you can't see him, it looks very, very good. He holds it well.
so I started losing my hair I knew it was gonna go at like 15.
Oh,
Like
really?
saw
I
the
thought it was. I thought
scarring
it was.
stuff.
You look like somebody who should have a shaved head. I always figured it was intentional.
So my prime hair years was like 13, 14 years old. 15 does a little bit of receding hairline. and I got made fun of it constantly.
Oh, really? That stinks.
But this is where it gets a little bit better. At 17, I knew it was going to happen. So I did shave my head at 17 just to see what it would look like. And I liked it. I got compliments for it. And I remember I forget where I went to. I think I went to like a store in the mall, like looking for like Rogaine at the time. And I had just turned 18 too. I was driving. So I drove by myself here. And I go, hey, listen, I'm interested in buying Rogaine. I'm losing hair. And the girl goes, I think you should keep it the way it is. I know I could sell you this right now, but I think you look sexy like that. And this made my entire this was awesome. Like, this is the greatest thing I've ever heard. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna keep this. But a few months later, I didn't listen. But I did notice I was losing it. And I finally called it quits at like 22, 23. But the reason I'm talking about this is with a lot of the hobbies that I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm with a lot of men who are in their 40s or 50s, and they're starting to lose it. But what I'm noticing with them is they're panicking. Like, they do not like it at all. This is something that, like, for them, it is bothering them so much. And that's just, it's the thing. Like, we're both going through the same experiences. I'm like, okay, it's gonna happen. I gotta shave this, otherwise it's gonna look like it's an haircut. And I'm okay with them. Like, it is what it is. Like, well, I can take whatever joke comes to me. There's other people who are very sensitive about it, where it's like a loss of identity. So two things are happening to both of us, and it's happening to me younger. And I'm not trying to say I'm better. I'm not trying to say that this person's just reacting to it bad. I'm just saying we are going through two different experiences. We are two men going through the same experience in life, but we analyzed it differently. We took it in differently. There's different meaning behind it. For me, I'm like, okay, so this is gonna be my look now. So I'm gonna give myself some muscles, give myself a sleeve, and just own it. Other
Right.
people, it's like a withdrawal. Like, they have a hard time accepting the fact that this is gonna be the new identity they have. So I think a lot of times, and this is what got me into, I guess we can get into it, what got me into coaching, how all these things just lead to so many aspects in life that we didn't even realize. Excuse me. One thing I totally forgot to mention, when it came to choosing that school, the St. Joseph School, I was stuck between that school and another school, a school called Five Towns. They were both the same price. They were both giving me some scholarship for going to community college. So all I had to do was just pick between these two schools. A few months before I made that decision, I was dating somebody who had went to that school, St. Joseph's, and she was saying good things about it. We broke up. However, she still was the one that got me to go to that school. And I do believe to this day, if it wasn't for her, I didn't meet her, I would not be where I am now with my video business.
Oh, I thought very, very similar story. So I started dating a guy in college, and I was dating him for a very, very long time. It wasn't like a good relationship, right? Not the guy to be with. Um, but I had a job. I had a job when I was dating him. And for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. Uh, because of him, I ended up leaving that job and getting another job at Verizon Wireless, which is where I met my husband. So I would have I'm very, very cautious by nature. I'm a full-time wedding photographer because I got laid off from my full-time job. So again, getting laid off sounded like the worst thing in the world, which ended up being the best thing in the world. I was in a terrible relationship. Uh, but whatever, right? Everybody's in bad relationships. It doesn't matter. But because of that relationship, so it's funny. It's the same thing with my husband. He was in a relationship that wasn't great before he met me, and one, literally, I got a new job because of this ex, and I met my husband. But two, both of us from going through relationships that weren't good, it it almost like laser beamed pointed us into what we wanted, what we didn't want, what we were looking for somebody. And when we met each other, we're actually we're complete opposites. We're very, very different, except for in the fact we're both incredibly loyal and we don't lie. So like if you're talking to me, what you see is what you get. there's there's no other there's no other side of Deanna that you don't know about. And he's the same. But it's funny, like going through those terrible, terrible things was absolutely necessary for me to get to where I am today. Even younger, when I was younger, I was, oh my gosh, I was teased uncontrollably. In today's language, I would have been suffering from bullying. It's funny. I talk about it a lot. I'm not ashamed that I was bullied, teased, whatever. Now they call it, bullying. But I mean, so bad to the fact where I used to just come home and cry. Like every single weekend, I would just come home and cry because I hated my life. It was terrible. People called me ugly, flat chested. No one's ever going to like you. I had the popular boy in class before the teacher showed up. They're like, oh, Deanna thinks you're cute, because everybody thought he was cute. So he turns over and he looks at me. He goes, oh, but Deanna, she's ugly, and holds up a cross like I'm so ugly it's evil. And this was before the teacher came into class. So this was like a solid 10 minutes of me, just because it was like in between lunch and recess, or lunch and class. So like there was nowhere to go. And it was literally like you see in the movies. Everybody in the class turned around, pointed at me, and started laughing. And then the cool guy just kept laughing at how ugly I was. Right. So why do I tell that story? Because there's been times where I've had to go to school meetings and I talk about how like I was bullied, just, I mean, terrible at the lunch table. It was nonstop. But my mother would always be like, suck it up, buttercup. I don't know what to tell you. You're not ever guaranteed that people are going to be nice to you in this world. So like, get a thick skin and get over it. Like I was never given options to fail or options to just collapse under pressure. Like, sure, you can feel sad. You can talk to me about whatever you want, but like, now deal with it. Like, I don't know what you want me to tell you. And when I go to these things, I'm not saying I'm not a proponent for bullying. Nobody should ever get bullied because it doesn't feel very good. But I'm also not one who's like, just take it to the authorities and let them handle it. Take it to whoever. And people would like look at me like, how could you say that, being somebody who suffered through that for so long? And just, it was awful. And I'm like, because it made me who I am today. Like now, even in high school. So for better or for worse, I started developing and looking a little bit more like what I look like now. And magically, boys were nice to me. When I developed and got a little bit prettier, magically the bullying stopped. So it was just how it happened, right? But it was one of those things where like I can't stand it. Like if I ever see somebody being treated poorly, I stand up for them. I don't talk about people behind their backs. I don't ever try to. I would never want to tear somebody down because I know what it felt like. So did I enjoy 3 years of absolute misery where I hated my life? No, it sucked. It was the worst. Would I ever take it back in 1,000 years? No, because it's who I am today. And this isn't me just saying this like, oh, it's really easy to say it, now. But my oldest daughter is my mini me. She is, she is me. And I've always been a person who's like very true, like very my authentic self. I've never tried to fit in because I can't ever lie about who I am. And my daughter's the same way. And middle school is a terrible experience if you're going to be someone who doesn't try to fit in because you're just who you are. And she went through the same thing all the time. And now, there's this very big anti-bullying thing that exists in schools. And I would tell her all the time, like she would come home, she would feel sad, she would talk to me about it. And I'm like, whatever you do, don't you ever go to the guidance counselor for it. Like if you have a problem with somebody, talk to them. If they're not going to get better, then just like get over it. I don't know what you want me to do. Like you're not guaranteed people treating you nicely in this world. Don't let people treat you poorly, but you have to come up with a way to deal with it. You can't expect the world to change. You just have to know that you're a good person and you can get over it. And my daughter went through that time in her life where it was terrible, and now that she's getting a little bit older and she's gaining that confidence herself, it's given her the opportunity to find her tribe. She goes to Polytech now. She goes to art school. She's with people she loves, doing something that she loves. So experiencing that awfulness for so long like gave her the room gave her the room to be who she was going to be. So sometimes you just need it, right? Like it sucks when you're going through that valley, but life is valleys and peaks, right? Like you need the valleys to feel the peaks.
It's really it's so interesting, and that's such a question. Someone else I had a conversation with somebody a while back ago. He's like, we need more bullying. And I get what he's saying. However, we don't need it. If it happens, it happens. But
Right. Nobody wants to be bullied. It's awful. And people who are bullies, like I can't comprehend it. As a person who received it relentlessly for 3 years straight, I don't get it. I don't understand what makes a person want to do that because it's awful. So yeah, like I wouldn't encourage bullying, but like you need to learn how not to seek happiness from other people.
so I remember, yeah, I remember I went through this whole cycle of bullying, but as I got older, it really just became like people would just push me from behind and do all that stuff. And I remember my mom had said, you know, what ended up happening was I would fight back, but then I would get in trouble. And I remember what was always happening was I saw this with school, where the person who instigated, yeah, they got in a little trouble, but the person who retaliated got in more trouble. And I'm like, that's not fair. It's not working out. So now you're like second guessing yourself, and you're like, oh crap, I don't know what to do now. So my mom put me in at the time. This is like 2006, 2007. She put me in karate, and you learn a little bit of self defense there. Um, I think there's other arts that are better, but at the time, it was enough for me to handle a 12-year-old kid. So I remember one time the kid got to me. I'm like, there we go. Like I can defend myself now. And that evolved because 2008, 2009, mixed martial arts becomes very popular. And now I go from karate to kickboxing. Now it's very different because now I'm learning how to like really protect myself. And what's great about this now is I'm not showing off that I know how to defend myself, but the school I was in had like really big windows that you could just see right through. So kids would just walk through and they would just watch me train. And now it's like, okay, now people know that I can help myself. I stuck with it. And 10 years later now, I'm teaching the kids that I'm teaching the little brothers of my school bullies. And then I'll ask them, like, oh, how's Nick doing? And they're like, he's just fat and lazy. I'm like,
Yeah, my daughter, so all three of my daughters train jujitsu as well. So for anybody who's out there listening, if you haven't listened to the podcast or you don't know what 10th Planet is, it's also jujitsu. So Matt and I both train Brazilian jujitsu at different schools. And all three of my daughters train. If you haven't ever met me in person, I'm a tiny person. I'm not terribly big. And my husband started it, and he's like, you know what? You're doing weddings. You're out late at night. Like, I think this would be a great thing. And I actually didn't want to do it at first. I thought it looked like cheesy, because you only see like stuff on TV with the kimonos or whatever. And then I fell in love, and all three of my kids are in it. So my oldest daughter, who's like me, who's suffered with the like the teasing, she started getting into jujitsu. And girls are different. Girls, it's like girls, it's the mental game. Girls won't push you. Girls will just make you question your very right to existence. Girls tease going the long game. They really just want you to hate life. So she used to, on the bus, they have assigned seating now. You can't pick where you sit. So she would always sit next to the same girl, and it was every day in, every day out, the same thing. So she started training jujitsu, and she got on the bus, and the girl started in on her again. And my daughter told me when she came home from school, she's like, because girls, I'm not saying girls and boys are different. I know, like, whatever, like social constructs out the window. I'm just talking about like in general, you know, girls will have the mental game rather than fist fight. So my daughter was like, you know what, mommy? She started in on me again, saying all this stuff. And I just looked at her and I thought, if I wanted to, I could choke you out right now. I'm not going to, but I could. And it just made it better. And it was amazing. I actually, Zach Mislany, shout out to Zach Mislany, owner of 10 Planet Jiu Jitsu. I told him, I'm like, you have no idea what you've done for my daughter, because I lost her for a while. She was very, very down. And you've brought her back to me. You've given her that confidence in herself, and you gave me my daughter back. Because, you know, as a kid, everybody's sunshine and lollipops, and then people get older and you experience difficulties. But it's amazing. I talk about jujitsu all the time. People are probably like, shut up, no one cares about your stupid jujitsu, but it does so much for you. Even me as a grown woman, I never did anything athletic at all. I was a cheerleader. I cheerleaded because I wanted to wear a cute skirt. That was it. But doing jujitsu and going out there and doing something physical, doing something terrifying, competing is terrifying. It's the most terrifying thing in the world. You're going out up against somebody else. If you lose, you have no one but yourself to blame. All of your friends, family, and teammates are watching you, and it's mentally the most terrifying thing in the world that you can do. And just going out there and doing it and knowing you have the support of your school and friends, it has there's 1,000 amazing things that you can do for it. So I have to imagine, even just for you, like it probably felt super cool. Like the kids are like, oh crap, like Matt's Matt's fierce AF, like he could do anything. But I have to imagine, like, also just knowing you have that, like, just helps you, give you that confidence to where it's like you just don't, your little teasing doesn't matter the same way, because I know this is what's inside of me.
It's really interesting that you say that, because I have a hard time thinking that, because what I realized, and then I guess this is just like the way I interpreted it. This has been a part of me for so long, because I remember I started karate. Everyone starts karate at like 5,
Right.
you know, because the parents, you know, they want you to shut up, so they kind of figure out, okay, how do I calm this kid down so this way he eats his dinner and goes to sleep. So they put me in that for like 5, but I went back to it intentionally when I was 12. Then from 12 to like 14, I did it, and then I stopped. No, from 12 to 13, I did it, and then I stopped from 13, 14, and then at 15, I joined when mixed martial arts became a thing. So at 15 years old, I'm like having boxing gloves. I'm learning how to punch. I'm learning how to block. Just basic stuff. Like I said, it was never for the sport. It was always for, okay, I keep getting picked on. I'm gonna keep learning until this stops.
What's the name of your school, by the way, that you go to
So
now?
right now, I go to a place called Monster Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
So everybody, if you're
Monster.
from Long Island and you're looking for an awesome school to train at, and you want to meet Matt in person and have your chance to choke him out, go see Monster BJJ in Long Island.
I love it there. And back to what I was saying. So someone had told me this. He was telling me how grateful this is an older gentleman who was like in 39, 30, like 40. And he was telling me how he started when he was 25. And he goes, when I was 13 to 21, like 13 to like 25, he like felt like this cocky and type of kid. Like he was a different person before getting into martial arts. Whereas for me, it's like, this is all I've ever known. So it's like hard for me to be like, who was I before? Who was I before I was 11 years old?
Right. Yeah.
I didn't know
Who
who I
even
was.
knows such a thing?
Yeah. So that was the hard thing that really got to me. But what's nice is you hear it from other people. So you're like, okay, obviously there's things that have benefited me, just because now I'm in a point where I can teach people. So one of the things I'm teaching people are the things that I've just learned subconsciously, where I even realize, oh, like this is something that people just don't have.
Right.
So like when sometimes you get so used to training that you forget that other people don't train. And one of the things that I think training's really helped me with, and this is where it helps me with weddings. I think one of the things that brides tell me all the time, and I love this. This is like my favorite compliment, is I have a very calming presence, very relaxed, nothing bothers me. Now, for two reasons. One, because training, it's very high stress. So I'll take a wedding over a high stressed physical situation. But then also you realize that getting emotional, getting angry, it might feel like it's productive, but it's not.
No, you go into that fight or flight.
Like sometimes I get into that fight or flight or that sometimes I get frustrated when I'm training, and then I'll act due to emotion, but I realize I'm just exhausting myself. Like I'm not actually getting better. I'm just exhausting myself, and I'm just gonna get tired. I'm gonna screw things up, and then it's gonna become a cycle. It's just gonna become, I get angry, I get exhausted, and I get annoyed and sad, and then because I'm annoyed and sad, then I get angry again, and then I get exhausted, and then it's just gonna become like that's actually in coaching that's called a crazy eight pattern. But there's so many things that I've learned where I had to. What's nice is you get to see other people transform. So you're like, okay, like these are skills that I've just developed. Um, I have to like really pump the brakes and realize, okay, like these are skills I've learned because of this. These aren't just
Right.
who I am. Like I developed this because of my whole life dedicated to this.
It's funny.
Uh,
I hear it from people. They're like, oh my gosh, jujitsu must be awesome. It must be so great to just take all your anger out on the mat and just get everything out. And I tell people, I'm like, no, it's actually the opposite. It's like solving a puzzle with your body and your mind. Like you're using, yeah, I mean that's the greatest way to describe it. You're solving a huge puzzle with your body and your mind. And when I'm training, sometimes your adrenaline goes and you go fast, but you're never angry. You're like thinking through very stressful situations. And it's funny how it's like the opposite. I don't know if you experience that, but I'm never angry when I'm rolling. Sometimes I'll be mad at myself. I'm like, I just put myself into that submission. You're like, what a dummy I am. Dylan, that was you last night. Dylan's one of my training partners. Um, but but yeah, you're not angry when you're rolling. It's like you're a full body puzzle.
so I mainly go in the mornings. I like to just get it over with. And in the morning class, there's a lot of people who there's a lot of high level there, a lot of brown belts, black belts, a good chunk of purples, and we've all known each other for a while at this point. And now it's to a point where if I go with certain people, it's more of a mental chess match than it is
Mm-hmm.
a physical thing. Like sometimes we'll just a lot of times, and I've showed you videos when we were working the wedding together. I showed you videos of like the shenanigans that goes on,
Yeah.
and sometimes we do that. But for me now, it's more of okay, how can I've never played this. I never played chess before. I've never played. So I keep telling people how I want to learn how to play. I'm like, I don't have the energy to learn how to play. But I'm so fascinated, whether it's chess or whether it's in the movies. I know the movies are fake, but when you have someone who just is so strategic and so they planned every scenario. Like whenever I hear about like military or police officer or they use critical thinking and strategic thinking, I'm so fascinated by that. So I try to apply that where I'm like, okay, how can I bait you into doing something just dumb? How can I just mentally trick you? Because at this point, because I'm a bigger guy. I'm like 200, and sometimes I'll go with smaller people. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to use my weight on this person. So if I can beat them mentally, then it's just that's even better. So like, okay, how do I trick this person? Like when I go with the girls, obviously, if I'm a lot bigger than the girl, I'm like, not gonna go. I don't want. I tell them I never want to go easy on you because I always want to be respectful, but at the same time, not underestimate you. But I'm gonna beat you mentally.
Right.
That's one of the things I always tell them. Like, listen, I'm never going to use any of them, but just know I'm going to beat you mentally. So that's
Just
like
crush
for
your
me, I'm like,
soul.
I'm just gonna like let you think you have something and just be like, oh, nope, that little thing just is a trap. So those traps, those I'm like 10 steps ahead of you. I always thought that was so strategic, that was so fascinating. Even going to weddings, the type of vendor that I love is the one that has so much experience where like for example, like hair and makeup artists, I learned so much from them where they're like, hey, did you pee? Did you brush your teeth, like drink some water right now. Like it's like they've been there, they've done that, they know what possible outcomes could be happening, they know what obstacles could be that can come ahead of time. Someone who's just very experienced, just in general, I'm just fascinated by, and that person that learns from their experience.
It's so as you've been talking, one of the things that I mean, due to the nature that you're in this industry, you probably pick it up. But anybody who's listening, you're one of the things that's very inspiring about you is you're always talking about how you're moving yourself forward, but you're not so full on yourself that you don't think other people have the answers. Like talking about how you gain this from that person and you gain this from that person and you're gaining this from that person. And one of the things that I've seen over and over and over again with everybody that has come onto the podcast talking about how they go their own way is that they're while they have confidence in their abilities, they're always looking to see if somebody else did this, what can I learn from it? And you've mentioned a couple of times how despite the fact that you're doing very very well on your own, you've obviously achieved success, you have the two different businesses, but even from places that you wouldn't think, um always learning from what other people are doing and learning how to apply that to your own life.
There's something to be said about this because I was just noticed someone had brought this up the other day, how we live in this world where, especially in the wedding industry, where there's people who just come in and maybe not their first year, they do well, but like their third year, they're charging more than what we were charging. Their work is really good. They're mentoring people now. They're like, you see, like there's an online class for pretty much anything now. And one can say, oh, it's because of social media or just people just want to scam people. But also, what I've noticed is we live in a world now where there is so much experience to learn from. It's not just you read a book and then you do it yourself. Like, there's so many opportunities to talk to somebody who has been in your shoes, who can really save you so much hassle and save you so much time and emotional stress just to be like, hey, listen, don't do this.
Right, right.
And honestly, if you respect that person, you respect what they say, you won't do that. Um, and I think that's what's made, I don't want to say it's made instant gratification, but it's made people, I think it's just evolution also, but things are just easier for people. Yes, I feel like there's some cons to it, but there's also pros to it. Like I was saying before, like there's people who jump into the wedding industry now, and 3 years into it, you can make a substantial amount of money. People in jujitsu now, it, I always hear the story because when I started jujitsu, it was very rare that you even knew a purple belt.
Right.
Now it's like you go to a gym, every gym has like 2 or 3 black belts minimum. Um, where it's like 10 years ago when you just had a few purple belts, you can learn and you can learn from that purple belt mistakes, but there's only so much because there's not that many.
Right.
Nowadays, someone can walk in and be like, there's at least a dozen purple, brown, and black belts altogether who I can learn from.
Yes.
And all tell me different things. And now it's not easier in a negative way, but easier in a way where it's like, oh, you can just save so much time now. Like
You just have to
we
be open to listen.
if you're open to listening, there is a much clearer path than what we had to do. Like
Right.
just it's just innovated. Um, yeah, did someone who just got their black belt have to earn it in like 15 years probably? Yeah. But now there's kids now who could probably earn it in like 7 or 8 because the path has been given to them. I don't think it's a bad thing. If anything, it's a compliment for us because we've done such a good job. Like the older people or the not older people, but the previous generation of successful people have taught so well and they've given a good example for other people to follow. Like
Yeah, it's amazing how so in our gym, a lot of the instructors also all compete all the time, and they'll come in and they'll teach us moves and they'll be like, right, so this is what I did when I lost. And then it's one of the things that I come in and I work, and they'll literally teach us from their direct mistakes. And it's amazing to see because, you know, it could be a path, and this is true for jujitsu, but true for so many things. It could be a path that you're going down that you're like, yeah, this is totally what I should do. But then to have somebody else come in there and be like, I did the same thing and didn't see two steps ahead, and this is what happened to me. And just being able to learn from other people's mistakes. And I'm always amazed at how willing people are to help. Like, people are willing to help you if you just listen.
So when I was in school, my mom actually gave me a really good she gave me a really good piece of advice. And this I was struggling, and like I said, I was just struggling just to pass the class. But this is what my mom said, and this really stuck with me. And I hope, like, I really hope everyone listens to this one. If you can, if you were able to take in a skill or take in a subject or learn something to a level to where you could teach that person somebody, to teach that topic to somebody who has nothing, that's when you really know what you're talking about. Like when you're good enough to be able to teach what you know, like that's like the goal. Like that's the goal you should have when it
Right.
comes to know something, because then that's when you fully own it. That's actually how I got into coaching, because I learned all the information so well that I'm like, oh my God, I can teach this to people. I can like help other people. Like I can actually do this as opposed to just for myself. So I think a lot of people either they know it or they don't, but it also makes you feel good about yourself. But it's a good way to be like, okay, I know this, but sometimes now because I'm a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, so once in a while I'll teach classes. When I teach, it's a way for me to one hold myself accountable, be like, okay, let me make sure I'm telling them the right things, but it also makes me realize, oh, I have to like, I know a lot. Like, it's making me realize, okay, here are the things that it's a way for me to really test my knowledge and my abilities. So I think the people who are helping right now, like it's a win-win for them because
Right.
they're helping other people, which makes them feel good, but they're also helping themselves.
Yeah, totally. It's a for anybody who doesn't know Brazilian jiu-jitsu, it's not just saying it because we train this sport, but it's the hardest sport to achieve a level of mastery, to get to the level of black belt. It's very, very difficult. So it goes white, blue, purple, brown, black. So the fact that he's a brown belt, you know, speaks very, very highly of his level. Me as a blue belt, as most blue belts are self-deprecating, we always think, oh, we suck. We're the worst person in the world, right? Because blue belts, you're training with higher level people, and you're always self-deprecating. And I'm talking about having confidence, but it's just one of those things, right? But it's funny, like you'll be like, I'm the worst person in the world at jujitsu. Let me just give my blue belt back because I don't earn it because so and so just tapped me. And then you have somebody come into class who doesn't know anything, and you have to, you know, you drill with them. They're your training partner that day. And then you realize when you're working with them and you're breaking stuff down and teaching them moves, one, very, very nice for yourself because you're reinforcing all those basics. And then two, you're like, huh, I actually do know jujitsu.
I hated blue belt. That was my least favorite belt because you were at a level where you now had an expectation for yourself. You
Right.
didn't upper belts didn't really have expectations for you, but you had an expectation and you're like, okay, I'm almost to purple because purple, I think once you get to purple, you can kind of because at one point purple belts were the main instructors of schools.
Right.
Purple belts
Right.
were gym owners, purple belts were professionals. So you're like, oh, I'm
You're
my
you're a
next.
purple belt now.
So now you're looking at purple, but at the same time, I don't say you're not good enough, but you're still at the level where someone who is much stronger or someone who's just like a stellar athlete can make you work or can actually still tap you. We actually have so in our gym, right? Because our gym is called Monster, so we attract a lot of big people. So
Right.
there's plenty of people who are well over 250 at our place.
Yeah, those are big guys.
I'm about 205 right now. I am nowhere near the top of the food chain. That's um a lot of times I'm the smallest guy.
That's
Uh,
crazy.
it just attracts a lot of
Right.
big people, and then more big people just attract. No one wants to be the biggest person in the gym. Our manager is the biggest person ever because he's like 6'4", like 390. So anyone that's like 250 or over, they're not going to feel uncomfortable because they're like, oh, this guy's here, so I'm not the biggest here. But what were they saying?
Just
Oh,
about blue belts, and you feel like I'm
so
good, but I'm not, but I'm great, but I'm terrible.
it's at that point where it's like there's wrestlers, like there's stellar athletes who like that still give you a run for that can frustrate you.
Yeah, for
There's
sure.
because you feel like, okay, I'm blue belt, I'm supposed to be better. But at the same time, why am I not getting like it's just such a confusing stage because there's also blue belts who are so good that they get black belt. There's a 10, I'm pretty sure there's like a 10th planet blue belt that's like a world champ.
He's a big guy, right? Like,
He's like a 17-year-old kid.
yeah, so he actually just put on a seminar. He's outstanding. He's young. He's very, very young, and he is killing it. He's got like a funny I have my phone over there. I'm
The long
struggling.
hair, the heel hook
Yeah.
kid. Yeah.
Yeah. So shout out to you. I'm going to include it in the show notes, but he literally just put on a seminar. And it's funny. I just took it. His game is like so wildly different. He's this young kid killing it on the competition circus, beating black belts. So it's so it's funny what you say. As a sorry, that is my daughter. I was supposed to pick her up by now.
Oh,
It's okay. Let me just mute it.
okay.
Hold on a second. Okay, so it is funny though, as a blue belt in her mid 40s, who's 115 pounds on a good day, I'm gonna kill my daughter. She's gotta stop. It is frustrating because I have training for 4+ years. You have the technical abilities, you have the skills, but getting these 20-year-old wrestlers who are super athletic, you're like, come on, my technique should be better than their athleticism.
Yeah,
So,
no,
but it's humbling in a very, very good way because it constantly teaches you to grow.
so that's what blue belt was so difficult for me because where we are, we're like in the there's a lot of Long Island's a big wrestling area. And a lot of times you'll have wrestlers who are done with college where it's like, hey, I still want to wrestle. So those a lot of them will do mixed martial arts, they'll do jujitsu, and they'll come in and you're like, okay, like this is a good challenge. And then you realize like there's a lot of traits from wrestling that I think are actually superior. Like, for example, a pace from a wrestler is way better than jiu-jitsu, just because the way the match is structured.
Yes.
Jiu-jitsu is supposed to be a slow pace, wrestling is a fast pace.
Yes.
So there's advantages that wrestlers have. However, with jiu-jitsu, you have submissions and positioning and pacing. But there's things that would when I was a blue belt, I started going with a lot of wrestlers and it frustrated me because I'm like, I feel like I'm supposed to be doing better than I actually am. And then there are times where you'll be like, oh, I did very well against a purple belt today, but I did hard versus white belt wrestler. So
Yes.
it's like it's so confusing. That's why it was so frustrating for me. That's why I actually didn't enjoy it because I didn't know what to expect. But then my head instructor, his name is Derek. I had a conversation with him about this, and he had said, "Listen, just go in, you just have fun, and who cares?" Like he didn't say it as like don't take it seriously. He just said it as like he pretty much like sums it up in a way where it's like when you make something fun, who cares like what the outcome is? Like if you have fun, because now I just have fun.
Right.
I'll try some stuff out. I don't have an expectation. There's goals I have, but now for me, it's like, okay, I'm doing this. You have to remember that this is something that you're doing because it's fun. It's a hobby.
Right. Exactly. My one friend slash coach, Renee Sousa does phenomenally well. There was actually a show, like how there was an MMA show to like a UFC fighting, like all the competitions. They did one recently for jujitsu. Who's next? Renee was on that TV show, like fantastically good. And he's coached me in tournaments. And he's always like, listen, go out there, do great, but don't be too hard on yourself because at the end of the day, no matter what happens, you got to do jujitsu today. Like you got to do jujitsu.
Yeah, that's actually a good way to think about it. Yeah. And I know for me, I'm so hard on myself when it comes to the competition where I've competed, I've done MMA fights, kickboxing fights, jiu-jitsu tournaments. Every time it's still like, am I worthless if I lose? Like if I don't get
Yes.
first, am I like the worst person ever? And I still go through that. I don't compete as much anymore because I think like with as much as I love mixed martial arts and as much as it's been a part of my life, I still want to do other things.
Well, and
Um,
also in our industry, it's difficult because we work every weekend.
but that's another thing. I have a wedding the next tournament, so I'm like, I'm not even gonna bother. Um, the off season, sometimes I think about it. The only time I've ever done tournaments is when someone says, "Oh, there's a tournament tomorrow," so I'll just walk in and just do it.
Right,
I
right,
don't
right.
really
You
do
don't
as well,
stress
but
yourself out.
I don't stress myself out, but I also don't do as well as I should have. My last tournament, I remember I did the Spartan race the day before.
I
It
think
was
you're
to
a
go.
crazy person.
Oh, I did it because I remember my friends invited me, and I remember they said that, "Hey, we need a spot. It's a discount." And so, me being my cheap self, I'm like, "Okay." Like I competed at a discounted rate. I am super sore right now, and I lost like the first round, but I'm like, okay, I did it. At least I
You
could say,
did it, right?
yeah, yeah, just to say that you did it, even though sometimes I wonder, like, oh, like, should I be doing more? Um, it's a nice mental achievement.
100%. The last two times I competed, I ended up, you win some, you lose some, but the one match I went up against this same girl in the last two tournaments. She's a phenom. She's incredibly good. I lost to her both times, which really, really sucked, and I hated it. And going into the second time, like she's very, very, very good. So I worked on my game. I had this whole thing. I was like so nervous. I wanted to throw up. Why do I sign myself up for this? Blah 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 blah. But at the end of the day, I competed. I did still lose to her, but I'm so happy that I did it. I'm so happy I didn't let my fear stop me from trying.
Yeah, no, it's great. Um, it's something just to be proud of. I remember I was dating somebody who she did it as a she was very she was a blatant hobbyist, and she one day said that she wanted to fight. And this is after we were still friends after we broke up, but I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" Like, okay. And I remember her just getting in there. I'm like, "Wow, I'm proud of her."
Right?
Yeah, I know we don't really talk that much anymore, but I wanted to tell her like I'm proud of her. Like,
That's awesome.
she didn't win, but I was like, just the fact that she went in, like she did something that was just horrifying that like most people would never even think about doing. I was like, you know what, just own this, like just own that, um, just own that because, for example, back to what I was saying with the whole meeting thing, to somebody who's like a veteran, just walking in might be like, okay, whatever. Like I've walked in there like me personally, I've competed like a dozen times. So for me, it may not mean as much to me, but for her, for someone who is so timid, like on her first day of class, to actually walking into a ring, you're like, okay, like that's growth right there.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And it's like what you said, just with everything, like just having the confidence to go out there and to do it. It's amazing. It's amazing what it does for you.
Yeah, and for everybody, it's just the reason I think one of the things that got me to stop comparing because I remember I used to be a big person. I used to compare myself to others, be like, oh, how come this person's doing better than I am? It's just everyone has I have my own coach too, just to kind of keep me in check. And he gives it to me great. He tells me, he goes, "Listen, some people are just not necessarily born with, but some people are driving through life with Lamborghinis. Some people are going through life with bicycles. Some people are walking. Some people are running. Some people have Mack trucks. It's just when you like when you drive on the road, do you really pay attention to the other cars that are on the road? I mean, you make sure no one hits you, but you're not paying attention to like, oh, this race car. Why does he have a race car? No, you're focused on
Right.
your destination. And that really helped me not compare myself. Um, One of the cool things about weddings is you get a chance to meet people, you hear their stories, and a wedding that I did that was, I'll show it to you later on. The dad, so the wedding got delayed because of COVID. So that gave the dad an extra year to do this. The dad was, I believe he was shot and he was paralyzed from the waist down.
Oh, wow.
It gave him a year to train himself to walk on a walker. So this way he could walk his daughter down the aisle.
That's amazing.
And there was not a dry eye in that church. So watching that, we're like, that is, so we take walking for granted. I
Right.
mean, we're gonna walk to. I had to walk to the bathroom when we're done with this. He went from paralyzed to I'm gonna walk my daughter down the aisle on her best day.
That's
And it's
amazing.
like those are the stories from like I gotta like pump the brakes because I can't compare to that. I'm
Right.
not going to compare to that. That's just an amazing story.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I honestly I probably could talk to you for another hour. But my daughter won't stop texting me that I was supposed to pick her up 10
I
minutes ago,
appreciate
which I was.
that.
It's
I
funny.
really appreciate that.
I tell her when I'm recording podcasts, I'm like, listen, sometimes it goes over. Sometimes people's stories aren't done being told. So just chill out. But I am a little bit late to get her. But Matt, this was awesome. Like, thank you. Thank you so much. Hopefully, in the future, maybe you can come back because I feel like we could have 3 shows. Like it's funny hearing you say like you weren't born with this confidence, that you were born like thinking like maybe you should be like more timid or whatever, because that would make you better, because I would have never guessed that from you for 1,000 years. Like meeting you, you just seem like this guy who's got it together, who knows what's going on, who's gonna like reach out and get things done. So that's awesome. Matt, can you give the name of your cinematography company and the name of your personal coaching?
Yeah, so I'm in the process of a rebrand right now for my cinematography company. So right now, currently, it's Mateo Val'e Wedding Films, MATEO VALE _ Wedding Films. However, I am going to be changing it in 2023 to the Midnight Project.
Ooh, I
So
like it.
we can go into that whole story next time. And then for my coaching, it is Helping Hand Strategies.
All right. And then it will be in the show notes. So Matt, if you could text me like the websites, because Matt works with us. Matt works with our company all the time. But if you could the official contact information. And as always, you can find us on the interwebs at cherryvillephotography.com. Cherryville Photography is my name everywhere on social media. So if you have any questions about wedding photography, hit us up. And Matt, this has been a blast. Thank you. Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great. I want to do this again.
Yeah, totally. I'm hyped. I'm hyped because I feel like if my daughter didn't, if I can't, I don't even think I can show you. I mean, honestly, like there's 20 texts from the last 10 minutes. It's like, shut up.
Well, drive safe, have fun with your daughter, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Bye, everyone.